Hey everyone, you're listening to another episode of Tu Tia Bruja. I'm Bex Carlos, your host. So for today's episode, we're going to talk about something a little scary, in case, the rest of the show hasn't scared you yet. We're talking about necromancy. So necromancy is the ability to speak to the dead. So I've always had the ability to have people speak to me that weren't necessarily in this dimension or weren't necessarily in this physical place. And for a really long time, it scared me. It made me really scared. It made me feel like there was something wrong with me. It literally made me feel like the devil was talking to me. But then as I got older, I realized that that's not true and life is complicated and we don't have all the answers. And sometimes people want to make us aware and give us some of the answers. So my buddy Orlandez has been a friend for a long time, and he had a very significant loss in his life. And we talk about him, we talk about like the bond that him and his father shared, and we talked about how sometimes a little necromancy between friends can go a long way and cause a lot of help. So let's listen to the show. Music's such a connecting thing. I think I have so many memories personally of like meeting people at concerts, going to, concerts with friends. So today on the show, like I'm really excited to have my friend Orlandez Lewis because I think he might enjoy concerts more than I do, which is saying something. So thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Bex, for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to talk about your passion for music. Tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of where that came from.
Well, I'd say, I guess, basically, if you're talking about me, like you said, in other words, you're talking about music. I mean, it's basically what I live, breathe, eat. It's everything to me. That all started from my father, of course, Orlandez Lewis Sr. Just my whole dad's side of the family, we were just a musical bunch. Like, I'd never met him or anything, but my grandfather, my dad's dad, he was in a jazz group in the 60s, and I think he played piano or he played drums, something like that. And I think it's just kind of coiled down just to like that Lewis gene, if you will. I mean, my grandmother loved music, of course my dad loved music. Like basically my whole father's side of the family loves music. So that was just a given to me when I was born. Dad just introduced me to so much stuff when I was a kid. It's just overwhelming. That's pretty much me in essence. That's my whole thing. I mean, I work at Vintage Vinyl, the Delmar Loop. I've been there for about 11 years now, a record store. It's a legendary record store in St. Louis. I have a radio show as well here in St. Louis, Friday nights, Night Grooves on KDHX, an independent radio station. So yeah, I guess it's fair to say that music is basically my life.
Yeah, and your father was like your best friend. So I think that, that relationship of just really bonding over music was just such a huge pillar.
Very much, yeah. I mean, he started taking me to Vintage Vinyl when I was 8 years old. I remember when I was literally a kid, like 4 or 5 years old. We all lived in an apartment complex, and just being around all this stuff. I mean, of course, CDs were the big thing. Dad, I remember in a closet, he had like 2 stacks of vinyl. And again, this is like the mid 90s. So who's really listening to records at that time? And I always used to go in that closet and ask him, like, what are those things up there? What is this? And he just caught my fascination for it. And then he took me over to this record store. And from then on out, it just became us going there every weekend, just about, and just picking up stuff, him telling me about stuff. It ended up being that moment from there. And we shared those moments together. And that's why music in its own essence, even though my father's no longer here, we share that together. I mean, he's no longer here in the physical sense, I'll say, but spiritually, musically, yeah, he's here all the time.
And I love that that's a connection that you both still share, with his passing. Because I remember when he passed, we were on the phone, for maybe like an hour just talking and checking in with each other. Because I think, death is one of those things that I think it's terrible for the loss, but I think it can be very amazing to see the support that you have rallied behind you when you're going through something so terrible, And I think that having a way to communicate with him beyond the physical was something that was important to you. And I remember suggesting a couple of things like, hey, have a candle, like maybe a glass of water, only asked to speak to him. You said you had like a result kind of after you did that, right?
Yeah, it was so nuts. I mean, I did just that, and I'd like played a couple of tunes and everything, some of his favorite things. And yeah, I mean, I literally just felt him. And then not too long after that, and I mean, of course, every person's experience with this, I suppose, is a little bit different. But from what I've heard about it, is my experience in particular is really rare, because I want to say maybe even that day after, that week after, he showed up in a dream. And for a lot of people, that takes a long time sometimes, from what I've been told, as far as having someone who's even super close to you, like you just show up and talk to you and tell you, what's going on with what's happening with them. Because, I mean, you were in two different, totally different dimensions, so that was like a big awakening moment for me when I actually saw him in my dreams. And I've since then, geez, I can't even count now. It's been multiple times I've seen him, and he's only been gone for like 9 months. He hasn't even been gone for a year.
Yeah, that's wild to me. But I think that the fact that you and your father had such a close bond, that's why you were able to do it so quickly over the shared love of music. I even remember being like, hey, it's probably not going to happen right away, but this is probably the best way to do it, where it's one, not scary for you, and two, it's still safe.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's nothing that's too, like you're saying, it's not too abrupt, or, it's nothing that'll just, while I'm already in the super beginning stages of grieving and mourning, it's not something that's just like, now I got to deal with this. And, not on a terrible connotation, but it's just more me questioning something else, as if I'm already kind of questioning what's happening already in my life. So to go about that process and do that, lighting the candle and having a cup of water there, it really did help. And I think it opened up a door just to a lot of things. I mean, not even pertaining to music, but I remember not too long after we spoke, I remember I was really dead set on finding this old picture of him that I'm sure you've seen before now. I've posted all these pictures of him, but I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. And it's just a black and white picture, and he's got this pose, and he's standing in front of the candy store he used to work at. And I swear I hadn't seen this picture in like 20 something odd years. And in our basement, I mean, it was junky, and it was filled with just crap and all this other kind of stuff. And one night from work, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to go down here, just gonna pick up a box, see what I can find in it. I was not in the basement for more than 5 minutes, and that picture just showed up. I feel like that definitely was him.
Yeah. With asking to only speak to him and making sure that everything was set, you went about it like the best way. And I think that you very much early on grief process were just like, hey, I would love to talk to you. That's opened a door. And now I feel like that's going to be a continuous relationship you have forever.
And the other thing too, I think that might have, well, I don't even want to say might have, definitely helped immensely, was when my dad did pass, it was just the two of us in that house. I mean, we were the only two people who lived there. Nobody else lived there. It was just me and him. So it was just like he never left, really. I mean, his spirit was always there before. And, when he physically passed and everything, it was still home. He was still there.
Well, our belongings carry our energy. You know what I mean? Like, his energy was still there.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I mean, and I still of course, in my apartment now, I still have a lot of things, like it's TV and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, he's still here.
So many people think that death is the end, and I don't think death is the end. Death is the end of the physical. It continues on, and there's things that we're not aware of, and I'm not going to act like I know 100% what they are.
No, well, nobody knows. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And nobody knows. But I'm open to it, and I think that it's cool to be able to continue those relationships, from beyond the grave. I think that's beautiful.
Very much. And I mean, my father, he touched, I mean, of course, me being his son, but he touched so many people. I mean, during the funeral, it was just ridiculous. Like the amount of people that was there, you would have thought it was a concert, literally, because it was so many people that were there. And since his passing, other people have, told me other things. I mean, my aunt, his sister, like she said, and that's another thing that's so crazy, because she's had some dreams, but her dreams are kind of more just, I think she was telling me not too long ago that she thinks that he's taking his time to speak with her in particular, because in her words, he has a lot to say. So he's kind of more taking his time on visiting her. Whereas I guess with me, again, we said so much to each other in the duration of time that we had. It's just more now kind of just playing catch up, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. Taking a quick pause from the episode, Halloween's creeping up around the corner. And if you're not 100% sure what guides or who's working in your spiritual corner and you kind of want to know, reach out to Melissa at Temperance Home and Bar. She does astral readings, which are really great. She gives you a detailed written account of basically any guides that she encountered and the specific ones that might be a good fit for you. So definitely reach out to her. She's Melissa at Temperance Home and Bar. Let's get back into the episode. Do you do tarot? Is that something that you're interested in at all?
Oh, I've never done it before. I wouldn't be against it or anything, but I've never had any like firsthand experience with it.
Okay. Well, I really want to pull a card since today is a very meaningful day for you for a lot of reasons. Let's just see, like, what the universe, what it's telling you. So I'm going to start shuffling them. Take a couple minutes to like close your eyes, focus on your breath, just like breathe in as deeply as you can, breathe out as deeply as you can. And whenever you feel ready, tell me to stop. And I'm going to pull the first one from the top.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we have the Justice card reversed. Okay, this is what I'm taking away from this. So to start, this is a major arcana card. So these are cards that typically display like a life journey or an enlightenment that you might be going through. So, okay, keep in mind if you are going through a time where you are seeing the reality of life around you and you're just constantly seeing unfairness and just, the hard realities of life sometimes that don't always go acknowledged. Make sure that you're being honest with yourself about what you can take. Because I think sometimes, we've been conditioned to take more than we can handle. And being able to step back and being able to create boundaries and being able to create like a fairness within yourself and what makes you happy is important when you can't really control the structure of everything around you.
Yeah, I get that 110%.
Yeah. So, bottom line, be good to yourself. Make sure that you're not taking on more than you can handle. The world is kind of bullshit, but one, I think that you still have a super strong support system. So, you have people who are around you who care and like, but when you reach out, when you feel comfortable in sharing, like, hey, I need someone to help with this. I think that you have the structures in place to help you with that.
I would say so. Yeah, I mean that's definitely been proven. Yeah, again since January. Just the amount of people who've and even still, I mean, since Dad's physical passing, I mean, just the amount of people, yourself included, who just check in and make sure I'm, right and just doing the best I can do. At the end of the day, I mean, like any of us feel that quite a bit, and I believe that's a big reason as to why I've been able to achieve what I've achieved so far this year. I mean, in my mind, I'm just doing like what Dad would do. I just want to make him proud. And yeah, I mean, without the support system and the strength that I've actually had, I really don't know if that would be possible. So I'm just thankful for that. And I think again, that's Dad too. I mean, that's Dad kind of shielding people, the right people around me with his spirits and with his energy.
He's definitely looking out for you. And I feel like trying to help with that heavy load because like the world's ugly right now. I mean, not that the world hasn't always been ugly, but I think we're just aware of it in ways that can be really heartbreaking and exhausting.
There's just more out there now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that like we just as a whole, but especially you because it says so in the card, I would just make sure you're taking time to rest because rest is important and rest is a form of resistance that I think we all forget about.
Yeah. And I will say too, it's so funny you hit on that because like the first few months after Dad's passing, I mean, that's when shit really was just like, okay, now I gotta, get a probate attorney, and now I gotta figure out what my living situation. It was just so much stuff going, just a million miles a minute. And yeah, like a couple of months afterwards, I mean, that was like mid March, early April, and just like the rest of the world, basically, I was sheltered in. I was kind of like almost forced to confront these feelings and literally just kind of rest, to be honest with you. I needed that area, that moment of space, if you will, like kind of after everything happening. I mean, I wasn't going to work because again, we got a global pandemic that's happening. So it was almost just like, yeah, like the universe was just kind of, I mean, I don't want to sound selfish or anything like that, but in my particular instance, it was almost like the universe was telling me, sit down, just like stay there, do whatever you got to do, like basically be back at one with you, which was damn hard to do after everything I had experienced.
Yeah. There's no terrible place at times like your mind.
Yeah, and on top of that, it's just I really wasn't. People were still checking in, but I wasn't expecting people to be. If anything, I mean, again, it just kind of says who I am as a person, and also just how I was raised and what both of my parents instilled in me, I was the one checking in on people. Everybody's just like, wait, you checking in on me, dude? How are you?
I think that you're just kind of that person though. You know what I mean? Like I hate to say this, but you're not someone who likes the attention on you.
You're dead right. Yes.
And I understand that. And I understand that. But sometimes we need to take the mic too. You know what I mean?
True.
Being able to vocalize and state how we feel, even if we don't need anything in that particular moment. You know what I mean? I also understand that it can be really overwhelming when everyone's asking you the same thing. Being comfortable with being like, I appreciate you reaching out and asking me at this moment. I don't need anything, but if I do, I'll reach out.
Yes. And I will say, because again, it kind of goes back to like the tarot you were reading, where you're just saying like making sure you're in a good space and also just like you're not taking on too much, because that's the thing that I still continue to experience at times. And I really experienced a lot when everything was still fresh, because again, dad had just passed. I understand everybody's concern and their sentiments and everything, and I appreciate that 110%. But it's sometimes when it's kind of like I don't know, like a catch-22 somewhat, because there were times when I did want to be left alone, and I really just couldn't be, because then I had one of my dad's coworkers calling me, and then I had, one of my cousins or something I had heard, you know what I'm saying? It was just one of those things where I had to kind of have to just repetitively explain myself and explain my feelings, when at the same time I didn't even honestly know what the hell I was feeling, if that makes sense, because it was like an abundance, it was an overload, and trying to put that into words and just actually like tell somebody where you're at as far as a mental state at that time, shit is hard, especially for someone who's never experienced anything like the loss of a parent, or something like that. I can't really relate that to you if you've never experienced it you know
I get that.
I had my dad around for 29 years of my life. He was there, and I had some friends before dad's departure that lost parents, in high school or even younger than that, and I always used to kind of, well, I wanted to be there, but I never knew how to be there. And the thing is just like there's definitely no textbook definition on what you can say or what you can do to comfort someone who's experienced like a loss, like especially the loss of a parent, unless you've experienced it. Yeah, it's kind of unexplainable.
When we talked, I just wanted to listen like as much as possible and like give suggestions of what I thought might be helpful. Cause I was like, I obviously don't know what you're going through, but these might be something to try out. And, I'm really glad that you were able to find some joy and some help in that.
Oh, for sure. And, I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like, again, it's just a personal thing, because each person processes things differently. Somebody else experiencing the death of their father, they wouldn't, or mother, or, parent or significant other, whoever it is, they probably wouldn't necessarily be open to certain suggestions of, connecting, or I don't know, just new things in general, but I think that just depends on the person and who it is that's, if they're willing to actually be able to try something like that. I mean, me myself, I like to say most things, I'll put a limit, but most things I think I would maybe try once or twice, so any kind of suggestions or something like that, I was more than willing to give a go and, see what happened with it.
Well, see, magic's cool, y'all. You should try it. Well, Landy, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been such a great conversation. As a fellow St. Louis resident, can you think of one, if you'd like to tell us, how to support you in any way, but if not specifically yourself, is there something or a business or something in St. Louis that you'd love to have us support?
Well, I would just say, I mean, it's kind of just really hard nowadays with, once again, a global pandemic happening, but just any black owned business, that you know of, any independent business that you know of, people are struggling right now. That's a lot of, I mean, individually and also structurally and just in all different kinds of ways. So anything that anyone can do to help out someone who's just, it's trying to get back on their feet again, or is just trying to make it happen at the end of the day, just trying to give it the best shot that they can. I just say support them. I wish I had someone in mind in particular, but I try to keep my dollar circulating as much as possible into just the independent community, whether that be the Black community, the Latina community, LGBTQ community, just anyone that's, again, just trying to fight this fight and just trying to keep it moving just to see tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I will brainstorm some stuff and put in the show notes between now and when I post. But Landy, thank you again. And I hope you had as much as fun as I did.
I did, and thank you very much once again for asking me to do this. Today has been an interesting day. It's been a difficult day, being the first birthday of my father's without him being here, but he's still here. It's still felt. So this helped immensely. Thank you so much.
So that was the episode. I know that death can be very sad and very hard, but remember, it's not always the ending. Also, if you have a family member that you would like to reach out to, I will offer the advice that I offered Orlandez. However, I suggest that you follow my directions very closely, and I also suggest that you be okay with ending conversations no matter who is on the other side. Sometimes death hits us real hard. I think death is a lot harder for the ones who are doing the mourning than it is the people doing the dying. You know what I mean? And I think that sometimes being able to stay in touch with those people helps a lot. So do what feels best. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find out all the information on how to get involved if you would like to be on this season. There's very limited spots. This has been such a pleasure to record, and I'm so glad for everybody who's taken part. Remember, you can follow the podcast at Tutia Bruja on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow me at BexbyCaston.com and also BexbyCaston on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.